everyone. I've started the recording and I'm hoping that students arrive as I'm going along in this workshop. I know you could be watching the recording, so please work along with me if you can. This could be a whole new technique that you've never used before. I know some students have been using this in their projects, which is great to see, but especially when working with the Art Foundation course and you're experimenting and exploring with new materials and techniques. This is great to see in some of your projects in stage 1 and then throughout the course. But also you can use it for other courses, level 2, GCSE course, anything that you're working with that you might want to experiment and explore a little bit further. This is another technique to push your designs and your photography a little bit further. We're going to start off just doing an introduction to Cyanotype printing today. So this is just the introduction. If we need to, I can always do an extra workshop later on, but at the moment, just an introduction. So briefly, what is Cyanotype printing? It was invented in 1842, and it's one of the oldest photographic processes still in use today. It was invented by Sir John Herschel. I'm not too sure if I've said that right, but 1842, and then it was popularized by a botanist, Atkins, and she used it to document plants and seaweeds, and those photographs, those cyanotype prints, were used to create the world's first photographically illustrated book about these different plants and seaweeds. So it was really interesting. It was a fantastic start to a new era of books. So how it works, quite simple but magical in a way. The process uses a light-sensitive iron-based solution. And when that solution is exposed to UV light, so sunlight, a chemical reaction produces that really dark blue, which is iconic for cyanotype prints. Okay, so that's what creates this sort of almost photographic effect. It creates a vivid, permanent, and utterly beautiful print. And I'm hoping you can work alongside me and we can develop our own sort of experiments, really. So what you need, you can get most of this stuff just from, maybe you can go to an art supply shop, or you can even buy the equipment off Amazon or anything like that. So you don't have to spend a fortune on it either, okay? So thinking about paper, you can get some pre-coated cyanotype paper, which is sometimes easiest for when you're starting out, so you can just work on composition and laying out elements onto your paper. So it all comes pre-coated. So you can get those kits if you want to. Alternatively, you can buy the chemicals as well, and you can, which is ferric ammonium citrate and also potassium ferricyanide, which you can buy, which I have got, and I'm going to show you this process today. So there's two options. You can get the paper that already comes with the chemicals on top, which is a little bit easier for beginners, but then you can move on to working with the chemicals and you can get these. This is though when we need to be really careful health and safety wise, okay? They're often sold as a ready to mix kit from an art supply store. Normally comes in powder, and then what you do is fill up the bottle with water and then shake it up, and then you have that chemical, okay? You need a soft brush or a sponge for applying an even layer of solution. You need a light source, which hopefully, now it's springtime, summer, we've got this wonderful sunshine I have here today, so that's perfect timing. Or you can get a UV lamp, which offers more control if you're working indoors, especially if the weather isn't fantastic. You can use a UV lamp. However, Most of the time when I'm working with cyanotype printing, I just use the sunshine and work alongside the weather, basically. You can start collecting leaves or flowers or ferns that are fantastic because they give this wonderful shape. Anything that's sort of structural plant-wise, you can really get some great prints from that. Or there's another way of printing, which I'm hopefully going to get to show you, which is working on a black and white image, but inverting the image. Make sure you invert it. Invert the image and printing that onto acetate, which will give you some negatives, photographic negatives, which I'll try and show you at the end of this or during this process. I've just got one to show you. So you can work with two different styles. And what I think is really key is all about experimenting. Oh, we've got some students arriving now. Brilliant. The other thing that you need, I use an old photo frame, but unfortunately the frame broke on this photo frame. However, I can still use the cardboard backing and also that, well, mine is an acetate top layer. But if you've got a piece of glass on the top of your frame, even better, because that's sort of a little bit heavier and it keeps everything in place, okay? So a sheet of glass or acetate, thick acetate this is, holds the botanical objects flat during exposure so they don't move. If you just layered sort of leaves or petals onto the paper, put those outside, no doubt there's going to be a gust of wind, blows all the petals off your piece of paper, and after all of that hard work, it will be gone. So that's what we really want to keep, is keep everything together, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So that's how we're going to sort of, well, what tools you need, and I'm going to send all this through to you. I'm going to quickly whiz through because I'm well aware of time and I want to show you how to get started, basically. Mixing the chemicals, as I said, you're going to have sort of two small bottles. You can get a cyanotype printing kit and it all comes ready. You have your bottles, you have your paper, your gloves, everything's there ready for you, okay? So what you need to do is when you get your bottles or your kit, then you need to follow the instructions. The instructions are always in the kit, and it gives you really nice detailed instructions of how to add water to the bottles and mix it together. Normally, you follow the instructions on the bottle, but you dissolve 25 grams of ferric ammonium citrate into 100 milliliters of distilled water. If you haven't got distilled water, you can use tap water, that's absolutely fine. Distilled water will make it a little bit crisper, the prints will come out a little bit crisper. Okay, you do the same thing with 10 grams of potassium ferrocyanide, I'm saying that right, and you mix it together. That's what I had here. I filled the bottles up, shaped and shook them. The next thing is really important. Once you've got part A and part B, you mix equal parts of those into a beaker or a jar. You need to mix exactly what you're going to use for that day. The reason being, and that's really important, when they're in the bottles, they're going to keep for a little while. However, once they're out of these and you've mixed them together, they're only going to last about 2 hours. Once after 2 hours, you won't get a good print. So it's really important that you only don't mix the whole of your little beakers of solution chemicals, because then they'll only last for 2 hours. So you only mix a small amount, a tiny amount, and then if you need to mix more, you can do, but you don't want to waste it because it only lasts, once it's out of these little tubs, only lasts for 2 hours, okay? I suggest you cut or source about 6 sheets of different papers. So sort of maybe 9 different weights of papers, sorry. So maybe 90, 160 or 300, maybe some multimedia sketchbook paper. Try and get a mixture of of papers to experiment with, and only about A6. Try and cut them to A6 size so you can do some experiments, okay? We're going to coat these evenly with a soft brush using our mixture, our chemical mix. Remember, it's part A and part B mixed together. We're going to coat that together. Then we're going to vary some exposure times as well. And we can label our paper. So we're going to try and do maybe 5 minutes in the sunshine. The maximum, I would say, especially in the sunlight, is probably 20 minutes. If you're using a UV lamp, then you can go maybe 30 minutes. But if we're using sunlight, especially direct sunlight in the middle of the day, probably 5 minutes to 10 minutes maximum, okay? Because it does expose, it does develop quite quickly. The time, note the time and the paper weight on the back of each sheet before exposing, because that's quite important, and then it shows you the experiments and the development of your work. And then after washing and drying, compare the results. And I'm going to show you my variants of experiments and results just to show you that in a minute. Health and safety wise, briefly before I get started, health and safety wise, we are going to wear gloves the whole time that you're working with these chemicals, even when we're placing our objects onto it. At every stage of this, you need to use gloves, okay? Because we're working with chemicals. Once you've finished, you wash your hands. Even if you've been wearing gloves, I want you to be really careful. You wash your hands really well with soap and water. The other thing that's key is in your studio or the space you're working, that you have a nice ventilation. So you've got air coming through. So if you are breathing in anything, it's ventilated, okay? So I don't want you, obviously, breathing or putting these anywhere near your mouth or anything, because obviously they're chemicals and we don't want you getting poorly at all with any of that. Okay, so really please wear gloves, keep your hands washed in a ventilated area, and don't put them anywhere near your mouth. Okay, we're going to coat our paper quickly. We're going to expose this. We're going to put our botanical plants on our piece of paper, and we're going to expose that into the sunlight, and then we're going to develop our prints, and that's by washing in cold water for at least 5 minutes. I'll show you why. You're going to do one wash and then a sort of a last wash just to develop it fully. Okay, I'll send all the materials you need. I'm well aware of time and I want to get started, and I'll go back to this in a minute. I'm going to turn my camera around and let's get started. If anybody's got any questions, please write them in the chat. And I'm going to move my camera around to the overhead camera and we can get started here. Let me know. Oh, I'm actually going to unshare my PowerPoint. I'll go back to that in a minute. It's just in the recording, it doesn't show up very well. So I'm going to put that right. I've got the overhead camera. If you've got any questions, please let me know. If anybody else wants to arrive. Okay, so hopefully you can see all that. I've got a mixture of papers here, all small size. Don't do them big at the moment. And I'm going to show you a couple here that I've done before, because I've got little notes, and this is what we said, make little notes. I did this one on wet paper. However, I've got lots of blurred edges. The reason it looks a little bit pale and blurred is because I overwashed it. I exposed it for 10 minutes, but I overwashed it and it's gone a little bit blurred and not as bright. Okay, this one here worked okay. Can you see that? This one's worked okay. I've got some lovely details, but it's 10 minutes and I still feel that it's a little bit overexposed, this one. I also worked on, it was sort of quite wet still with the chemical. I didn't quite dry it. So I wonder if that's why I didn't get the desired effect. These ones, right, these ones went very not as good as I wanted at all. They have been overexposed. I did 20 minutes in direct sunlight, and can you see it's just all dark, and I didn't get, these were dandelions and I wanted all the little seed pods. However, I did not get any of that detail. I got the detail of the stalks, but none of the actual wonderful dandelions. So I overexposed those too much. So that was 20 minutes. But what's really good with these experiments is because it shows you and you learn from the process. So those were overexposed, but I'm going to keep them because it reminds me. The next one I did worked out much better. So this was the dandelion again, same as what I just showed you on that other one, but I overexposed it. However, I just put it out for 2 minutes. Just for 2 minutes, because the dandelion, I'm hoping you can see all that detail, because the dandelion has got such fine details on all the little seeds, you don't need to expose it in the sunlight for very long. So you need to think about the material, the subject you're working with, and then also think about how long you can expose it. And by just doing experiments, you'll work it all out. So I got some lovely detail on this. I was really happy with that. And that was on thick 300 weight paper. The only thing I probably did, hindsight, I overwashed it a little bit in the developing, but again, we're learning, aren't we? This one, again, 300 weight paper for 5 minutes, and I got, again, some really lovely details with this. So I think with the sunlight, 5 minutes works much better when we're working in direct sunlight. Okay, I just wanted to show you because, as I was saying, when you're working with these cyanotype, it's all about experimenting and exploring. So here we go. We've got part A. Oh, I'll put it on the right side here. Part A and part B. So when you work with these have all been mixed. So it's already mixed. Followed the instructions on the sheet. And what I'm going to do, or what I've done actually, I added a teaspoon, just a small teaspoon of part A and part B, and I've mixed it together in my beaker here, and it turns sort of almost a green colour. A small amount in there, okay? Oh, main thing, I've got my gloves on, all right? That is really important. From now on, I'm keeping my gloves on my hands. I've got a big paintbrush. You can also, with your kit, if you get a kit, you get a sponge, quite a nice sponge, almost paintbrush. And I'm going to just paint this chemical, part A and part B mixed together, remember, equal amounts. And I'm going to do a nice even layer on a number of different test pieces. Why am I doing that? Because I want to experiment with a variety of different materials, so a variety of different plants. Plus also, I want to experiment with different times as well. I want to try and vary the exposure time. So maybe I can do one for 5 minutes. Maybe I can do one for 10 minutes and one for just a couple of minutes. See what happens for each experiment. Can you see? I'm just trying to keep it as even as possible. Oh, the key thing, that I've forgotten to say. Try and keep in a sort of dark room. You don't want to be sat near a direct sunlight whilst you're painting these. And I'm going to show you the best way of keeping them, because they've got to dry now. So these have got to dry out. And the best way to keep them, I find, is in a little drawer, if possible. If you've got a storage box that you can put in like a wardrobe or something, anywhere dark for these to dry is perfect. So I've got a drawer. So I'm going to place them on some newspaper and put them in my drawer to dry. So I've done 3 there, but you might have time to do some more. I've got a bit more in there. Remember, it only lasts for 2 hours. So I've got a number of different test little pieces here. What I'm going to do with those now, they're going to dry, probably take about, well, maybe a couple of hours to dry. So I'm going to put them in a dark area to dry. I've got a drawer here, so I'm going to put them in the drawer so they can dry out. Take their time, put them in newspaper on the bottom, and they can dry out, okay? You don't want them in direct sunlight yet, because that's when they're going to get exposed, and you don't want to take the photographs just yet. And as I've done before, I've put those away so they're nice in a dark drawer, ready for me to use another time. Keep your gloves on at all times. The next stage, once they are dry, they're going to look a little bit like this. And as I've said, please don't work anywhere with direct sunlight because you don't want to take the photos yet. You want them nice and sort of in a dark room or a darkish room. I've got some shutters, luckily, on my window, so I can shut those and I don't have to worry about it. Right, this is what I was talking about with using an old frame. This is an old photo frame, which is really handy because the frame broke, which I can now use as my Cyanotype printing. So I'm going to place on the cardboard my 3 prints. Oh, actually, I'm just going to do 2 for now because I'm going to show you what else you can do after they're dry. So I've got my piece of paper that I want to use. I've also got some materials here. So those are all my experiments, done a lot. So when you're getting pieces of leaves or plants, try and think about how you could use the structure. Also, another great way, and I haven't done this for a long time, but if you have, even better, if you've dried out, if you've got flowers or petals that you've dried out before, you might want to use those because they will flatten. And if your plants are flat, when working with gloves, it can be a little bit awkward there. So when you're working with gloves, be careful there. So here's the botanical one. The other one I want to quickly show you is how you can work, as I mentioned before. Can you remember I said black and white image, but you have to invert it so you have it'll show up as a photograph. So invert the image, and I'll go through that again at the end just to remind you. Do you know what I'm going to do with this? I'm going to put some plants in the background just because I've never done this experiment before. I'm going to put some plants, and then I'm also going to layer that over the top. I don't know what that's going to come out like, but I thought that might be quite interesting. I haven't done one like that for a while. Right, so put that there. You're placing your petals, your leaves, whatever you've got onto that frame, onto your piece of paper. And these are just experiments. The next bit you need to do is really important. You grab your piece of glass or your acetate, whatever you're using. I've got acetate here. I don't know if you're going to see that on the camera because obviously it's see-through. And I'm going to place that carefully over the top of my paper and all my materials. The next thing, if you've got these are really handy because they keep everything together. Can you see those little clips? If possible, if you've got these little clips handy, if you add those on, if you're working with glass, the glass is normally quite heavy, so it will keep everything in place. But I've got acetate, so I always use these little clips and I put a few on, and it keeps everything in place. The next step, I want to create these wonderful prints, these cyanotype prints. The next step is literally putting these in sunlight for about, I think, 5 minutes will do. Let's see how we go. See how we go with that. I'm going to just place it out here. See if I can find a good area to place it out here. There we go. Quite lucky I've got a window right outside. I've got nice sunlight just outside my window. Once that's working, we've got about 5 minutes. I want to just go through what my top tip, because obviously when you're working with this is the prepared paper. So this is already dried out. So it's come out of my drawer. I don't want to use it just yet. So what I do is I place it in an old envelope, and I'll add all of my pieces of paper that are dry. Make sure they're dry. Add them into this envelope, keep them safe and dark, because then it's nice and dark. For an extra kind of layer, I put them in another one to make sure they're nice and safe. And then what that does, it keeps them nice in a nice dark envelope, and I place them back in the drawer. So when I'm ready to create my prints, they're all there ready to be used, because sometimes you don't want to do it all at once. So you might want to just keep them safe. You've got to keep them nice and dark, remember, because you don't want to expose them just yet. So that's a really handy way of doing it. I'm going to put those in my drawer, and then next time I want to create a cyanotype print, it's all there ready. But what I want to just show you before, whilst I'm here as well, is you don't have to print on paper. Once we get to another stage, don't know if you can see that there, we can start, these are a pocket on some jeans, we can start experimenting onto fabrics as well. So this was just painted a pocket on some jeans, laid some little plants on there, and it's created. They're not quite dry yet, still a bit here. But again, experimenting and have fun, working on fabrics as well as papers. Really try and experiment there. Okay, the next stage, hopefully we'll see how we're going. To find out if your prints are working, yeah, I'm going to grab mine in actually, just to show you this next stage. So to find out if your prints are working, can you see how it's gone a green, olivey kind of colour? I'm going to shut my shutter a bit. Can you see how it's gone like an olive, brown, bronze colour? That means that it's exposed enough, and that was about, remember I've got direct sunlight, about 3 minutes. So it might have worked. I take the clips off, I take my acetate top off, and I can now, because I've shut the shutters, I haven't got any direct sunlight, so I can now take these feathers and plants off. Can you see it's all starting to come together a little bit? It's gone a nice interesting colour there. So the next stage, I've exposed my paper. Now I'm going to develop it, and I've got with me 2 buckets of water. Ideally you're going to run these under cold water in under a tap, but because I haven't got that with me, you're going to have to just bear with me a little bit, and I'm showing you in a bath, a little tray of water here. So the first stage is really washing this out. Ideally cold water, running cold water for 5 minutes, okay, until all of those chemicals, you'll sort of see that the water coming off, you won't see that on the camera I don't think, but the water coming off is slightly yellow. Can you see that? So that's the chemicals on the paper. And what we need to do is get rid of that. I'm trying to emulate running water. Not too sure if that's going to work. Come on. So 5 minutes. Can you see it's all changing? Oh, this is the magic of the process. This is why I really enjoy cyanotype printing, because you don't really know what's going to happen. So I'm just checking now. Oh, that's getting there. That's slightly less yellow. Gently under running water, just gets this clean a little bit better. But I'm just going to quickly, oh yeah, that's much better. Right, the next stage, once you've got that sort of yellow staining off, which is the chemical, and you need to get that off, the final dip is in another clean tray of clean water. Okay, so I'm just moving that over my next tray that does the final wash. So that's one tray, and this is the next tray. So I'm just going to wash this one a little bit more. Can you see I've still got my gloves on? Make sure you always wear your gloves, especially at this stage, because there's a lot of chemicals in this water because it's come from the paper. Okay, so you've got to make sure you've got those. Oh, that came out really quite bizarre, that one. That was with the ferns underneath, and then the acetate inverted image over the top. And I'm going to explain about why I've got these lines in a second. I know I've run over slightly, so well done, guys, if you're still here with me. Right, that's looking less yellow as I'm washing it, and I'll put that in the final bath, which is the clean water. The final clean water here. And what a difference! I hope you've just followed along with my these were 3 minutes in direct sunlight, and it might not have even been 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and we've got one here. So I need to dry these now, and where I need to dry them is again not in direct sunlight. I keep them on a rack, again in a drawer. Oh, that one's come out really clear, hasn't it, this one? Can you see how sharp the edges are on this image here? Oh, let me show that up there. Can you see how sharp the edges of the petals are on that plant? And that's because I only had it out for about 2 minutes. And here as well, those really lovely details there. I think that one's worked the best. And I'm going to put these to dry again on a rack in the drying room, in a dark room, nice and safe away from sunlight. And I've given them a good wash for about 5 minutes. Here's one I did earlier. I'm just going to show you the lines that came out. My printer was running out of ink, and I didn't realise. So when I inverted my image and printed it, which was here, I inverted it so it's black and white but also inverted onto acetate. Can you see that? It's got to be on clear acetate when you print it. My printer was running out of ink and I didn't realise, and I had these lines going down, which meant when I created a print, I got some lines, these stripes going down by Cyanotype Printing, which I really, really like. I didn't realise it was going to happen because I didn't realise my printer was running out of ink. But I think the stripes look really great. It gives a whole different effect. Again, this one was done for about 2 minutes. Really quick, again, because it was sunlight. So you can really just experiment and have fun and really explore the world of cyanotype printing. I'm going to put those in my tray again. I keep them in a rack, in a wardrobe, so they're not exposed to the sunlight when they're drying. I'm going to move my camera around again. Has anybody got any questions? Look, I'm in a very dark room here because I've been working with the printing, but I hope you can still see me. Anybody got any questions for me? I know I've whizzed through the Cyanotype Printing, but I hope it gives you a starter of how to create these wonderful experiments, and I hope you will have fun if you manage to get all of the tools that you need. I'm going to send this PDF. So all of these tools, remember, you can work with these chemicals here, work with these chemicals here, or you can get ready prepared paper. Exactly the same process. Being safe, health and safety, always wearing your gloves, okay? Make sure you're always wearing gloves, washing your hands afterwards, and being really careful. Also on this PDF, I've told you how to dry everything, where to keep everything safe. Remember, once you've got your dried pieces of paper prepared, keep them in an envelope. I've used like an old Amazon envelope. Keep them all safe, away from sunlight, away from light, in an envelope. I put them again in another envelope and put them in a drawer so they're nice and safe. Okay, and then another few little top tips of working in sort of duller light, or if you've got a cloudy day, experiment, try and embrace imperfection. I think that's a really key one. Like just exactly like I've just done with that printing that came out wrong on my acetate, but the inverted image, but when I printed with it, I really like those stripes that it gave. So really embrace the imperfections. You never know what's going to come out, okay? Also on the last slide here, troubleshooting if things have gone wrong. So if it's a little bit blurry or soft around the edges, you might have either moved some of the petals or the leaves whilst you were exposing it, or you might have overexposed the prints. I find when you expose it to the sunlight for maybe 2 minutes or 3, you get these really sharp edges. So just think about the time you expose it. And also back to my dandelion one, where I overexposed the prints and all the lovely little details disappeared. So maybe you can think about different objects might need different exposure time. So just experiment, have fun. And as I say, work on about A6 size, and then you can always go back to it. Oh, that's brilliant. You've never looked into Cyanotype printing, but this is a good look at the process. Oh, yeah, you missed the beginning. So this was invented, Cyanotype printing was invented in 1842. And it was a great way of documenting seaweeds and plants, and it was a fantastic way of documenting all of these interesting new discoveries. So that's why lots of bugs and beetles and lots of things were used for the Cyanotype printing process. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I've gone over my time a little bit here, but it's because I was having so much fun. If anybody's got any questions, please let me know. This is all recorded, and also I'll send the PDF document so you've got that as well. Have fun experimenting. Be safe. Health and safety, really key. Bye bye.